I used to work the night shift at a small after-school tutoring center just outside Albany. It wasn't a bad job, quiet, routine. I'd show up around 6 p.m., clean the classrooms, restock supplies, take out the trash, lock up around 10. Easy money. The place was an old church someone had turned into a learning center. Still had the stained glass in some rooms, old wooden floors that creaked like crazy. There were 3 classrooms upstairs, 1 tiny office, a small kitchen, and a narrow stairwell leading to the basement. They kept all the old desks, supplies, and extra chairs down there. I didn't like going down, but it was part of the job. My supervisor, Mr. Harper, was an older guy, maybe in his late 50s. Tired all the time. He'd usually leave by 7. I'd be alone after that. The place always felt different when the sun went down. Not scary exactly, just empty. Hollow. The Thursday it happened started like any other. I remember it was cold. Real cold. The kind that gets into your bones even when you're inside. Harper left around 6:45 like he always did. Gave me a list. Wiped down the tables, empty trash cans, vacuumed the rugs, restocked toilet paper in the bathroom. Same stuff. I was halfway through wiping the whiteboards in room A when I thought I heard crying. Soft, high-pitched, like a little girl. It was faint. I figured maybe it was coming from outside. Kids sometimes played in the park across the street even when it was dark out, but when I peeked out the window it was empty. No kids, no cars, just the sound of wind. I went back to cleaning. A few minutes later I heard it again. Crying. But this time it sounded like it was coming from inside. I froze. Just stood there, holding a dirty rag, listening. It was coming from the basement. That didn't make sense. The place had been locked all day. I always checked every room when I started my shift. I would have seen a kid. I tried to brush it off. Maybe I was imagining it. Old buildings make weird noises, right? Pipes groan, floors creak. But then I heard it again. Longer this time. Like a sob. Definitely from below. I told myself it had to be a kid who got locked in somehow. Maybe a student wandered off, maybe someone left a door open earlier. Either way, if a kid was crying in the basement, I had to check. I couldn't just ignore it. The basement door was near the back kitchen. It was always locked. I had the key. When I opened it, a cold draft hit me. The air down there always felt a little colder, a little damper. I turned on the hallway light, but it barely lit anything. Just a weak bulb halfway down. I grabbed my flashlight from the supply closet and started walking down the stairs. The crying stopped the second my foot hit the bottom step. I waited. Nothing. Just the quiet buzz of the old fluorescent bulb. The basement was like a maze. Narrow. Hallway, 2 turns, then a big storage room at the end. I called out, "Hello, is someone down here?" Nothing. I walked slowly, my flashlight sweeping across the floor and shelves. Old chairs stacked in the corner. Piles of textbooks, a row of broken desks shoved against the wall. One of the desks had fallen over. I swear it wasn't like that before. I'd just been down there on Tuesday. I stood still for a second, just listening. Then I heard it. Footsteps. Running. Behind me. I spun around so fast I almost dropped the flashlight. Nothing, just an empty hallway behind me. I felt my heartbeat in my neck. My hand started shaking. I pointed the light at every corner, every shadow. "Hello?" I called out again, louder. "If you're down here, come out. You're not in trouble." Still nothing. I walked to the storage room. The door was cracked open. I pushed it and stepped inside. More desks, old filing cabinets, stacks of paper boxes. I moved the light across the room slowly. That's when I heard a drawer slam. Sharp and sudden. I jumped, whirled toward the noise. The filing cabinet. 3rd one from the left. I walked over and yanked. The drawer open, empty, the others too, all empty. I turned and walked out of there fast. I didn't run, but my feet wanted to. Every instinct in me was screaming to get out. I reached the stairs and climbed up without looking back. Locked the basement door behind me. I just stood there for a minute, trying to slow my breathing. Then I called Mr. Harper. He answered on the second ring. I told him everything. There was a long pause. Then he said, real casual, "You're not the first to hear stuff down there." That's all he said. I didn't know what to say back. Eventually, I just muttered, "Okay," and hung up. I sat in the main office for a while, lights on, door locked. My shift ended at 10, but I left at 9:30. Didn't care. I couldn't sleep that night. Couldn't shake the sound of those footsteps, the crying, the desk that moved. I knew what I saw, what I heard. I wasn't imagining it. The next day I called the police. I told them I thought maybe a kid had been locked in the building or maybe someone was hiding down there. They came by around noon. 2 officers. I walked them through the whole building, showed them the basement, showed them the storage room. They found nothing. No signs of entry, no one hiding, no open windows. Nothing moved. One of the officers asked if I was under stress. If I'd been sleeping okay. The other one, he didn't say much. But as they were leaving, he pulled me aside and said, "We've had calls about this place before, never found anything, but you're not crazy." Then they left. I thought about quitting right then, but I needed the paycheck. I told myself. It was a one-time thing, a weird night, nothing more. I stayed another week. I didn't go down to the basement again. I left the cleaning list half-finished most nights, just enough to not get fired. On my last night, I went to room B2 to clean up the markers. As I walked in, something caught my eye. One of the old desks from the basement was in the corner. I knew it was from down there because of the chipped leg. I remembered it. No one had mentioned moving it. It hadn't been there the night before. There was a piece of paper on top, just a kid's drawing, crayon on printer paper, a little girl drawn with messy pigtails, standing in a room full of desks, and behind her, a tall figure, black scribbled outline, no face, standing in the doorway. I left the keys on Mr. Harper's desk and walked out. Didn't say goodbye, didn't go back. My name is Ryan. I'm 27. I work as a mechanic in Hackettstown, New Jersey. I live alone in a small ground floor apartment. 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, small kitchen, and a living room. Nothing fancy, just enough for me. This happened not too long ago, one night. That's all it was. But I still think about it almost every day. It was a Thursday. Work was rough. We had 2 cars in the shop that needed full engine replacements. I was on my feet all day, grease on my hands, back sore. My hoodie smelled like burnt oil. I didn't feel like cooking, so I grabbed a sandwich from the gas station on the way home. Got inside around 8:30, tossed my keys on the counter, kicked off my boots, sat on the couch, ate the sandwich, scrolled my phone. I was tired. Way more tired than usual. Next thing I knew, I woke up and the room was dark. I must have knocked out on the couch. Phone was on the floor. Blanket was half on me. I sat up, a little disoriented. My mouth was dry. I checked the time. 12:07 a.m. The apartment was quiet. I could hear the fridge humming and a faint ticking from the wall clock. I stood up, stretched, and started heading to the bedroom. That's when I heard it. Someone said my name. Ryan. A woman's voice. Calm. Normal volume. Not loud. Not whispering. It came from behind me. From the living room. I stopped moving. It took me a second to process it. I live alone. I didn't have the TV on. The windows were shut. No one else had a key. I turned around slowly. The living room was dark. I couldn't see much. "Hello?" I said. My voice sounded weird, dry, tight. No answer. I stood still for a minute. Then I walked back and turned on the light. Nothing. The front door was still locked. Chain was on. Windows were shut. Nothing looked moved. I opened the coat closet, just my jackets and some old shoes. I walked around for another minute looking for anything off. Everything was normal. I told myself maybe I was dreaming. or maybe half asleep and heard something outside. Sound can bounce weird off the walls. Sometimes I went to the bathroom, took out my contacts, brushed my teeth, got into bed. It took a while to fall asleep. I wasn't scared, not yet, just on edge. Eventually, I started to drift. Then I heard it again. Ryan. Same voice, same tone, but this time it was inside the bedroom. I opened my eyes. Slowly. My room was dark but not pitch black. The blinds let in a little light from the street. I looked toward the foot of the bed. Someone was standing there, tall, still. I couldn't see the face, just a human shape. Long hair, not moving. I didn't say anything. I just stared. My body felt frozen. After a few seconds, I reached for the lamp on my nightstand. My hand was shaking. I couldn't find the switch right away. I hit the base of the lamp and it tipped over. I caught it and finally found the switch. I turned on the light. No one was there. The room was empty. I sat up, looked around. Nothing. I got out of bed and checked everything. Under the bed, in the closet, behind the door. Nothing. I walked through the whole apartment, all the lights on, looked under the couch, opened every drawer, checked the front door. Again, still locked, chain still on, no sign anyone had come in. I sat on the edge of my bed for a while, couldn't really think straight, just sat there listening. The rest of the night I didn't sleep. I stayed on the floor, leaning against the wall with the light on. I watched the clock until the sun started coming up. I didn't go to work the next day. I texted my boss and said I wasn't feeling well. He said, "You sound like you saw a ghost." I just said, "Yeah, something like that." I didn't tell him what really happened. I didn't tell anyone. When people ask if I've ever had anything weird happen, I say I had a strange dream once. That's easier than telling them the truth, because I don't even know what the truth is. All I know is that I heard someone say my name twice, and I saw someone in my room, then they were gone. There's no proof, no video, no marks, nothing moved. It's just something that happened, and no one would believe me if I tried to explain it. Now most nights, I sleep with the lamp on. Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night and I don't open my eyes. Right away, I just stay still, listening. I'm not sure if I'm waiting to hear her again, or afraid I already did. My name is Eric. I'm 28. I live with my cousin Marcus in a rental house in Trumbull, Connecticut. It's a 2-story place in a quiet neighborhood. We both work full-time and split rent. I work from home most days. Marcus works nights at a warehouse. The house is nothing special. It backs up to a row of trees. Quiet street. Good neighbors. Nothing strange ever happened before. One Tuesday night, I was in the kitchen doing the dishes. I had just finished eating and was rinsing a plate when I turned and saw one of the glasses on the floor. It was one of the heavier ones we keep on the counter. I hadn't touched it. I hadn't heard it fall. It was just sitting there. I picked it up and put it back. I figured maybe I had left it too close to the edge earlier. Didn't think much of it. That night when I got in bed, I noticed a soft light through the blinds. It was faint, but enough to catch my eye. I almost got up to look, but I was too comfortable. I assumed it was a neighbor's porch light or maybe someone's headlights down the road. It faded after a minute and I went to sleep. The next day was rainy and gray. I worked from the living room. Around 4 in the afternoon, I heard something in the kitchen. I walked in and saw the same glass on the floor again. I hadn't touched it all day. It was nowhere near the edge this time. I stood there for a while, looking at it. I didn't have an answer. I put it in the cabinet and went back to the living room. A little while later, I was on my laptop when I heard a sound from upstairs. It came from the room above me, which is my bedroom. Just a single noise. Nothing loud. I stopped typing and waited. It didn't repeat. I told myself it was the house settling or something shifting in the wind, but I still went up to check. The room was dark. I turned on the light. Everything was in place. The window was closed. Closet doors shut. I opened them both. Nothing there. I turned off the light and went back downstairs. Marcus came home late. I told him about the glass and the noise upstairs. He didn't say much, just said old houses make weird sounds sometimes. I let it go. I wasn't even sure it was worth worrying about. That night I went to bed like normal. On Thursday, something happened that I can't explain. I woke up around 2 in the morning. I turned over and checked my phone for the time. I was about to roll back over and go to sleep when I heard something. It was a knocking sound. It came from my bedroom window. My room is on the 2nd floor. There's no balcony or ledge, no trees close enough to reach the glass. No way someone could be standing outside that window. I didn't move at first. I just lay there staring at the ceiling. I thought maybe I imagined it, but then it happened again. I sat up. The blinds were down, but I could see the outline of the window behind them. I got out of bed and walked over. I waited for a second, then lifted the blind and looked outside. There was no one there. Just the yard, the trees, and darkness. The ground looked undisturbed. The grass wasn't moving. Everything looked normal. I let the blind fall back down and stood there for another minute. I knew what I heard. I left my room and walked down the hall to Marcus's room. He was asleep. I woke him up and told him what happened. He didn't really react, said maybe it was a branch or a squirrel or something. I didn't argue. I slept on the couch that night with the hallway light on. Since then, nothing else has happened. It's been a few weeks now. The house feels normal again. I don't talk about it with anyone. If someone asks if I've had a weird experience, I just say, the house creaked one night. That's easier. But every time I walk into my bedroom, now I look at the window and I remember what I heard. I was driving from upstate New York down to Georgia. It was a long trip, and I'd been on the road for most of the day. I stopped for gas outside of Roanoke, Virginia, and decided I needed to rest. It was getting late, and I didn't want to push it. Just off the highway, there was a motel. Small place, old. There were maybe 2 cars in the lot. Looked like it hadn't been updated in years. I didn't care. I just needed a bed and a shower. The lobby smelled like dust and carpet cleaner. There was one woman at the desk, older, maybe late 60s. Her name tag said Ms. Kelly. She didn't say much, just handed me a real key, not a card, and said I was in room 6. I asked if there were any restaurants nearby. She said no. Her voice was flat. Room 6 was at the far end of the building. The hallway was dim. The wallpaper was faded and peeling in spots. I passed one room with a TV on behind the door. That was it. The rest were dark. Inside the room, everything looked like it was from the 90s. A lumpy bed, a small wooden desk, a lamp that barely lit the space. The air was heavy, not exactly clean, but not terrible either. I brushed my teeth, set my bag on the chair, and lay down on the bed. I didn't even turn on the TV. I was too tired. I just turned off the lamp, rolled onto my side, and closed my eyes. Then I heard a knock at the door, not loud. Just a knock. I waited a second, then sat up. I checked the time on my phone. It was just after midnight. I walked to the door and looked through the peephole, but I couldn't see anything. It was just black, like the lens was broken or blocked. Looked down at the floor, no shadows under the door. I unlocked it and opened it just a crack. No one. I opened it wider and stepped out. The hallway was empty, no footsteps, no sound. I stood there for a moment, then went back in and locked the door. This time I bolted it. I got back in bed, told myself it was probably just a kid playing around, maybe the guest in the other room. I closed my eyes again. Maybe 10 minutes. Later, there was another knock. I sat straight up. I went to the door again. This time, when I looked through the peephole, it worked. The hallway was empty. I opened the door anyway. Still nothing. No sound. No sign anyone had been there. I grabbed the key and walked back to the front desk. Ms. Kelly was still there, staring at a small TV behind the counter. She didn't look surprised to see me. I told her someone had knocked on my door, twice. I asked if there were any cameras in the hallway. She said no. Then she said there was only one other guest in the entire building. She didn't ask any questions, didn't look concerned, just stood there. I didn't know what to say. I waited for her to add something, but she didn't. So I just turned around and went back to the room. Once I was inside, I locked the door again. This time I put in my headphones. I opened YouTube on my phone and played one of those 10-hour rain videos. I just wanted to sleep. Whatever was happening, I didn't want to hear it anymore. The sound helped a little. I lay there listening to it, eyes closed, body starting to relax. After a while, I opened my eyes and glanced around the room. That's when I saw it. In the corner near the chair where I left my bag, there was something. It looked like a tall shape, like a person, not moving. It didn't make sense. I sat up slowly. My eyes weren't adjusting right. The room was dark, but not pitch black. I could see the desk, the edges of the mirror, the curtains, and that shape. I reached over and turned on the lamp. The shape was gone. The corner was empty. I stared for a while, then got out of bed, checked the corner. It was just the chair, my bag. Nothing else. I stood there for a few seconds, then went back to bed. I left the lamp on this time. After a few minutes, I turned it off again. I wanted to believe I'd imagined it, but I couldn't sleep. I kept glancing at the corner. At some point, I saw it again. The shape. Still. Tall. Shoulders almost to the ceiling. It wasn't leaning or hunched, just standing. I sat up. This time I didn't move quickly. I just, stared. It wasn't reacting, but it looked closer than before. I reached for the lamp. Light on. Room empty. I looked down at my hands. They were shaking. I packed up in under a minute, grabbed my stuff, threw on my shoes, and left the room. I didn't look back at the corner. Ms. Kelly was still at the front desk. I handed her the key and said I was leaving early. She didn't ask why, just nodded once. I walked straight to my car and drove. I didn't stop until I was an hour and a half down the road. I pulled into a newer hotel near a bigger town and paid for another room. Fell asleep right away. Slept through the night. Nothing strange happened there. I've never told anyone about room 6. I don't think I need to. I know what I saw, and I know it wasn't supposed to be in that room. I grew up in Erie, Pennsylvania. We lived in a small rental house for most of my teenage years. 2 stories, thin walls, bad heating. My mom worked 2 jobs to support us, me, my 2 older brothers, and my sister. She was always tired. We didn't have much. My bedroom was the only one downstairs next to the living room. Everyone else slept upstairs. I didn't mind. It was quieter, and I liked having my own space. The room was small. My bed took up most of it. I didn't have a desk, so I always did my homework sitting cross-legged on the bed with my notebook in my lap. There were 2 metal vents on the floor in opposite corners of the room, old, rusted around the edges. They made noise sometimes when the heat kicked in. I never paid much attention to them. One night when I was 14, I was doing my homework like usual. Math problems, I think. It was quiet upstairs. I assumed everyone was either watching TV or in their rooms. The only sound in the house was the occasional creak of the floorboards above and the light hum of the old refrigerator in the kitchen. That's when I heard it. It was quick, a short burst of giggling, like a kid laughing at something small. Just for a second, I stopped writing and looked up. It sounded close, but not loud. I figured maybe it came from the living room. I stood up and stepped out of my room, checked around the corner. The TV was off. Lights were off too. I walked into the kitchen. Empty. No one there. Then I looked up the stairs. I could hear the faint sound of a door shutting up there. Nothing unusual, so I went back to my room and kept working. For a while, nothing happened. Then it came again. This time, longer, louder, clearer. The same giggling, but now it was obvious. It wasn't coming from the living room. It wasn't coming from upstairs. It was in the room. I froze. It lasted maybe 4 or 5 seconds, just that soft, strange laugh. It didn't sound like any of my siblings. It sounded younger and too steady, almost like it was looping. I stood up slowly and looked around. Nothing in the closet, nothing under the bed. Then I noticed where it was coming from. One of the vents, the one closest to my bed. I crouched down. The giggling stopped. I stared at the vent for a while, just stared. I got on my knees and leaned in. Listened. Nothing. Silence. I moved a little closer. The metal felt cold under my hand. Still nothing. Then I lay flat on the floor, turned my head, and put my ear to the vent. I waited. Maybe 10 seconds. Nothing. I sat up again, about to stand, when something made me look inside. I moved my face toward the vent and squinted. It was dark in there, just a few inches of space between the slats. At first I couldn't see anything, just black. But then my eyes adjusted, and I realized I wasn't looking into nothing. I was looking at eyes. 2 of them, wide open, motionless, just there, staring, back at me. I didn't understand what I was seeing at first. My mind didn't process it. I blinked, leaned closer, and they were still there. Just watching. That's when I lost it. I scrambled back, kicked the side of my bed, and screamed for my mom. She came running down the stairs like I'd been stabbed. By the time she got to my room, I was up against the far wall, pointing at the vent, and yelling. She didn't see anything. Of course she didn't. She knelt next to the vent, looked inside, ran her hand along the top of it, then looked at me like I was crazy. I tried to explain what I saw, the giggling, the eyes, everything. She sighed and rubbed her forehead, said I was overtired. Maybe I fell asleep doing homework and had a dream. Maybe I was hearing the pipes. Maybe one of my brothers messed with me. I told her I was wide awake. She told me to come upstairs and sleep in her room for the night. I didn't argue. I slept on the floor next to her bed. I didn't sleep well. The next night, I asked if I could stay again. She said okay. The 3rd night, she started to get annoyed. Said I couldn't keep sleeping in her room forever. Eventually, she made me go back downstairs. I checked both vents before I went to bed. I started keeping a flashlight next to me, but nothing else happened. No more sounds, no more laughter, no more eyes, just silence. I lived in that room for another 3 years before we moved. Nothing ever came back. But I never forgot. Even now, 10 years later, I still think about it sometimes. What was in there? How long was it there? And why didn't it ever come back? I've never told anyone else, not my friends, not my girlfriend, not even my siblings. But I remember the eyes.